Coffee is sort of a default choice for many of us. It's a beverage that suits virtually every single occasion. You can have it pretty much whenever you want, no matter what. It's always appropriate. And Ilford HP5 Plus has kind of fallen into the same sort of category. It's sort of a default choice film stock that so many different photographers use. The question is this a good thing? Are there alternatives to Ilford HP5 that work similarly? And ultimately, is being default choice a bad thing? To very quickly skim over the basic information for Ilford HP5 Plus, it's a 400 ISO film, so it's a medium speed film. It's a black and white film that is manufactured in England. It's available pretty much anywhere that film is sold, and it's generally also in stock and fairly inexpensive, somewhere between $7 to $12 a roll. I know that's a lot, but compared to some of the offerings from Kodak, that's not too bad. And it's also available in pretty much any format that you would want to use. 35mm, obviously, 24 and 36 exposure rolls, as well as 120 medium format film and various sizes of sheet film for large format photography. If you were to ask me what you should use Ilford HP5 for, I would tell you anything. In my opinion, it is one of the most versatile film stocks out there. You can use it for portrait photography, you can use it for nature photography, landscape photography, candid pictures of your kids or your family around the home. You can use it for street photography actually quite well, and even wildlife photography. If you want to take advantage of push processing, you can even use it to get more sensitive images and use it for low light photography. This film works basically anywhere for anything, which is kind of where that coffee analogy came from. 400 ISO is enough light gathering ability that you can use it indoors, and it's also not so sensitive that you can still get shallow depth of field portraits outdoors. It's also an extremely forgiving film to use. It has a very wide exposure latitude, so you can easily miss your exposure by a few stops, either overexposed or underexposed, and still walk away with a nice image. In my experience, it'll handle about 2 stops of overexposure before things start to look really, really terrible. But as far as overexposure goes, you can easily expose 2, 3, 4, even 5 stops over a neutral exposure and still get a very usable image. It's just a very, very forgiving film. This is a film that is super easy to develop. It works very well with basically any standard black and white developer that you can think of. And it's also very, very forgiving to mistakes in the development process, allowing you to mess up your development time slightly or your temperature slightly, still get good images, making it a fantastic film stock for beginning film photographers. HP5 has a very classic look. It has a relatively soft medium contrast level with a wide tonality, medium controlled grain that is going to be a part of your image. You will notice it, but it's not overwhelming, and it's definitely not shouting in your face. The film also has a very wide dynamic range, allowing you to capture good detail in your highlight regions, as well as your midtones, especially your midtones, as well as the upper shadow regions. The darkest shadows go completely black, but I find that gives subjects in images a very nice, almost ink-like outline. There's a reason that Ilford HP5 is used by so many photographers, and that's because it has just a look that is neutral enough that you can use it anywhere. It's not particularly stylized, but it also still has a very classic and appealing look with a bit of film grain and good contrast and sharpness that also push processes extremely well. Ilford HP5 is a film that if you wanted to push it to the 800 ISO or even 1600 ISO, you're still going to walk away with wonderful images. Of course, the grain is going to increase a little bit with every stop that you push process the film, as well as your contrast is going to be increased a little bit, but the images are still absolutely fantastic, and it means that you can use your film in even more situations, in low light situations, for example, where 400 ISO maybe wouldn't cut it. I think all of this plays into why Ilford HP5 has such a wide appeal. If you're looking for an alternative to HP5, maybe you're just a little bit bored of it, tired of seeing it recommended all the time, or you just want to try something new, there are 2 film stocks that I think could work nicely in its place that also offer a medium speed ISO as well as controlled contrast and grain to be able to use just about for any style of photography. The first of them is Kodak Tri-X. Kodak Tri-X is a legendary film that's been beloved by photographers, especially street photographers, for decades. It also is a 400 ISO film. It also has a very, very classic amount of grain, a very, very classic look, as well as good contrast, exposure latitude, and dynamic range. The only thing that's kind of not so great about Kodak Tri-X is its price, since it tends to cost sometimes double what Ilford HP5 does, depending on where you're getting it from. Another alternative that isn't quite so as expensive as Kodak Tri-X, but could also work as a substitute for HP5, is another film from Ilford, Delta 400. Delta 400 is basically Ilford HP5's professional cousin. It's Ilford HP5 with slightly smoother grain, a slightly smoother tonality, and a slightly, ever so slightly wider dynamic range, at least in my experience. It renders very lovely images, and it only tends to cost $1 or so more, making it a fantastic alternative. Quite possibly the reason that Ilford HP5 has become such a default choice and is so ubiquitous is because it's hard to match all the things that it can do. It has a wide exposure latitude, it has a wide dynamic range, it has very nice contrast, controlled grain, it's excellent for push processing, it's available almost everywhere, it's not very expensive, it's available in every single format. So the question is being the default choice bad? And the straight answer is no. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's good that we have a film stock that we can default to that just works in every single situation, which is one of the reasons why I and so many other photographers love Ilford HP5. And I recommend that if you haven't already, give it a try. I'm pretty sure you're gonna like it as well. That's all that I have to say for now. Please like this video if you think I've deserved it, subscribe if you think I've earned it, and I will see you next time.